Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. So welcome everybody to Tuesday meditation class. And so it was a kind of nice week this week. My old friend, Ajahn Saleko, was here this week. And often we're touring around with Ma. And so it was kind of nice. We met many years ago at Wat Pa Nanachat. So that was this week. So week before, went up with some other Buddhist friends to Rattlesnake Point, which is this kind of place in Milton. Always kind of pass by, going like towards Hamilton, and then Milton, there's this kind of big ridge, up. And so I always kind of wondered, like, what is that? There's this kind of gap in the ridge, and there's this like bridge. So I was like, I want to go check that bridge out. I don't know what's there. And so I ended up Googling, and apparently a lot of people love that ridge. And what it was there was this kind of company in the 60s that blew up a portion of the ridge for mining. And then there was this huge outcry, and it became, I think, like it's a and then we were kind of using the GPS, so the GPS would tell you to go into the express lane. And then, you'd be in the collector. So like, I think we should stay, in the collector because it's going faster, And then, we keep going and the collector would stop, and then the express would go fast, and all the time we'd be like, we should have trusted the GPS. And I think that happened a bunch of different times. So actually on the way back, I think there was at least on my part, there was a lot of faith in the GPS. It's kind of, just we have to trust, the GPS has to be has to be trusted. It knows about the traffic. It knows which lanes are good. But in any way, on the way there, we got stuck in this traffic, and then, finally got there. And then our friends, I think, we called them up, and we were late, and they were also late, so we met. And then kind of walked around this ridge, and, stopped and took in the views a little bit. Quite often, there's kind of maybe a little bit of a metaphor for practice. One of the kind of classic metaphors for practice is that you see the photo all the time. When we were at this kind of Rattlesnake Point, I was like, should I take one of those meditating on a rock pictures? Because if you go on the internet and you look for pictures of people meditating, they're always like on the edge of a cliff, like on a mountain, and they're like looking over Mount Everest. I never meditate like that. It's kind of, you wouldn't usually go like up to the top of a hill, and it's maybe not the usual place. But anyways, I was just joking. Maybe I should take one of those photos there. And so we did. But it's that much of a kind of common metaphor for spiritual practice, kind of ascending the mountain, kind of trying to climb the mountain. And one of the things about these photos of people on the mountain is that's what you see, right? See the kind of person on the mountain and they're meditating, there's this immense vista. It's like, that seems great. I'd like to get up to the top of that mountain and, do some meditation and take in the beautiful views. But oftentimes the part that is not really all that commonly portrayed is that to get to the mountain, sometimes you have to go through a lot of traffic. Kind of quite a bit of set out there, we want to get to the top of the mountain and see some nice views. And immediately a person sets out and they're in traffic. A kind of stop and go traffic that we didn't expect. Thought that would get to the place to hike in, 40 minutes. I think in the morning it was 40 minutes, but it ended up being like maybe it was an hour or something. Ended up being like an hour and a half. hour and 40 minutes even. It was like it was quite a bit longer than had expected. And this is a kind of similar thing in our spiritual practice, not to go too, not to try to make the talk too much of a climbing the mountain type talk. But there is this kind of element to a person's practice that they can't predict. You kind of know where we want to go, and everybody wants peace of mind. This is basically what everybody wants, what everybody does things for. And there's a road there. There's a kind of path there that's been laid out. There's a way to get there. But the thing about the path is it's not something that's all that easy to predict. You just kind of know what the mountain might look like from descriptions, might have seen photos of people meditating, looking out at the nice views, but we punch in our coordinates to the GPS, and it says an hour, and we get going, and we hit traffic. So the Buddha gives this kind of metaphor for this. It's kind of like a farmer, watering crops. And if a farmer starts watering crops, he or she knows that they want these kind of crops to grow and bear fruit. But they can't sit there and be like, grow this much today, grow this much tomorrow, grow this much the next day. But they know enough. Okay? They know if they plant it in good soil, if they keep watering it, then one day it starts to grow. But beyond that, things get tricky to predict. They're not kind of always the way that one would expect. Sometimes there's beautiful days where there's a lot of sun. It's kind of good for the seed. Sometimes there's rainy days where there's a lot of rain. Kind of not that good for the seed. And because of this, all those seeds planted in different soil, planted at different times, in different places, with different weather conditions, they grow at different rates. They germinate at different rates. But there is this principle behind them, that so long as they're watered, so long as they're cared for, they'll grow. So I know nowadays, kind of these GPSs. I was joking with somebody the other day, I've become like totally reliant on GPSs. I was born when there was no GPS. For the first half of my life, there was not that much internet. Kind of the internet came out in like the 90s. I still remember it. You go to download something and it would be like an hour and a picture would show up and you'd be like, this is amazing. Get this photo. It took an hour, but it was great. I can look, and you'd have it on your computer. And there was kind of no GPS. But now I'm just totally reliant on GPS to find my way around on buses. And even, you can use it for trains, these types of things. But the thing about these kind of GPSs is they give this kind of view of the world. Kind of computer technology gives a view of the world that's a little bit different than the view of the world that a farmer might have. A farmer in the natural world, there's all these things that you learn just by trying to grow the seed. But you punch something into the GPS, and it'll give you an exact time the bus should arrive. It'll give you an exact time you should be there. And it's all laid out with a kind of very predictable cause and effect, at least the way that the GPS is set up, at least the way that it's kind of supposed to go. So becoming reliant on this kind of technology, using it a lot, which is excellent, can give a person a view of the world that it's supposed to go this way. It should be step A, step B, step C. So I remember a friend of mine was telling me a joke. He said there was this comic. I haven't watched comedians for a long time now. He said there was this comic, his name I think is Louis C.K. He's kind of this famous comic. And he said he was kind of on this plane, and he was sitting there getting angry at his phone, like, what's going on? It's taking too long for the signal to come. And then he realized, wait a minute, this has to go all the way up to a satellite and then come back down to my phone. He's like, I'm sitting here on a plane, complaining about the length of time it takes this signal to go to a satellite and come down to my phone. And then he had this whole skit about what they called first world problems. These are my problems that I have. It takes too long for the thing to come down to the phone. But in any event, kind of this using this kind of GPS, predicting and planning the trip, one sets out, and what does one run into? One runs into things that are expected, things that one can't plan for. And so this is why one has to have this kind of knowledge, this kind of vision of a farmer. This knowledge and vision of somebody who grows something, somebody who cultivates something, somebody who plants seeds and watches them germinate. Because there is also this kind of principle behind our practice. There are actually ways that it comes about that are predictable. If a person continues doing good deeds, continues cultivating their mind in wholesome ways, then happiness is the result of that. That's something that comes from cultivating the mind in wholesome ways. This is a predictable thing. Kind of today was, I had to go to the Sri Lankan consulate and came back from the Sri Lankan consulate, and I had some lunch. Had this kind of what do you call it? What's it called again? Hummus. Had some hummus. Had this container of hummus, and I was trying to eat it on the train, but couldn't finish in time. You have to eat before noon as a monk, and my appointment was before that. So I had a bunch of leftover hummus, and I had some leftover veggies. And I was walking back from the Sri Lankan consulate, and there was this guy there with a sign. He's like, "I'm homeless, anything helps." And so, I walked by him. I was like, okay, And then I thought, wait a minute, he said anything helps, we'll see. And then I stopped and thought, well, maybe I should give him some of this lunch and see if he'd like it. Maybe he'd like some hummus. And so then I stopped for a while and thought about whether I should or not. And then I turned around and went up to him and I was like, "Hey, do you like hummus?" He's like, "Yeah, I like hummus." It's like I had some, and then I was like, "Okay, well, I've got some hummus." He was like, "Yeah," so I gave him the hummus. And then we got to talking. He's like, "I had some spicy hummus yesterday." We got to chatting a bit. And then I was like, "You like veggies? I've got some veggies here too." He's like, "Yeah, I like veggies." So I gave him the veggies. And after giving him the hummus and the veggies, I felt very happy. This was a great thing. I got the chance to give away this kind of hummus and veggies to this person who needed it. I kind of remember when I first started meditating and I remember reading about this kind of practice of giving. And, I got really interested in giving when I first read about it. Bhikkhu Bodhi had this kind of section in one of his kind of anthologies, and it was all about practices for lay people. And I was a lay person at that time. And so one of them was kind of about the importance of giving, and they had all these good results that came from it, and got interested in that. But I remember when I first started doing that, it was kind of okay, it was nice. But it's the kind of thing that when a person keeps practicing it, that tends to grow. You can keep giving, and giving over the years, over the times that a person gives, the amount of happiness, the amount of ease that a person can get from doing that grows. Kind of grows larger. It's kind of like this kind of farmer who plants the seed and watches it grow, watches it germinate. So there are these principles that a person can know for themselves when they come to practice. And it's kind of interesting, this with these GPSs as well. They've gotten so good, they kind of know the traffic patterns. Like they know when it's blocked up on the express. They know when you should switch to the collector. And, so it's to the point now where, okay, if I was driving, I don't drive, but if I was and I was on the highway, I might just trust the GPS wherever it goes. Because sometimes it seems like this traffic is just going so smooth on the collector or wherever one is, and it's telling you to get off. But it's like, well, it's going so smooth, I want to keep going. I don't want to stop. And there are also principles like this in our practice, because we do have these kind of guidelines. We do have this kind of, we do have these teachings that tell us how to practice, that tell us what to do, that tell us where to direct our mind, where not to direct our mind, what should be cultivated, and what shouldn't be cultivated. It's because of these things that the Buddha is said to be an incomparable teacher. It is kind of the most miraculous portion of his teachings is that he's able to instruct people, and people who practice in line with his teachings realize what he taught for themselves. It's said to be all these different miracles. That's the highest one. It's called the miracle of instruction. So when a person sets out to practice, this is the kind of interesting thing, is that there tends to be all these kind of reasons that come up why one shouldn't do it the way that the Buddha said to do it. one shouldn't follow what the Buddha said to follow. One of the most funny ones around this is kind of drinking alcohol. This tends to be the kind of precept that people have like the most, like, you know, well, not people, but the mind comes up with the most excuses why one should do it. You know? Well, you know, it's a little bit of a drink here and there, whatever, you know. Or the mind comes up with various excuses as to why one should lie. You know, oh yeah, you know, should lie a little bit, that'll save the person's feelings, you know. Or, you know, it's just get me through this for the greater good, you know, tell this kind of lie. Or do this little bit of whatever it might be, you know, killing, kill this kind of bug. But the interesting thing about this is that although mentally, the kind of rationally, it seems like if I just tell this lie, I'll keep going, everything will be smooth. What tends to happen is that when a person pursues that, when they ignore the GPS, they hit traffic. You know, kind of unexpected traffic that seems to come out of nowhere. Kind of lies tend to come together like that in ways that are unexpected. Killing tends to come together like that in ways that are unexpected. Drinking intoxicants, the things they ripen like that in ways that are unexpected. Going along the way, seems like things should be smooth, even if we don't follow the GPS, but then run into traffic. But the nice thing about all this is that if a person sets out traveling on the path, traveling in their spiritual practice, aiming at a goal, and they follow the GPS. They follow the instructions, they avoid the traffic, whatever difficulties arise, they keep watering their plants, they just keep watering them, whatever conditions, sunny day, rainy day, okay, it's a rainy day, let's do what's appropriate there. It's a sunny day, let's do what's appropriate there. The day comes when they reach the foothills of what they're trying to reach. They get to say the parking lot, like the parking lot of this kind of place. And from there you kind of know, it's not too far. So when we got to this place, we got to this kind of Rattlesnake Point, we were kind of waiting around for a bit. They had some nice beaver tails and other different things. I don't know if anybody got them. But I was expecting it to be this huge hike up this cliff, you know, because you see these like pictures, and it looks like this massive, you know, like cliff, and it is. But anyways, there was a friend who was already there, and one of our friends called her. He was like, "Where are you?" "I'm at the cliff." So I thought, okay, let's hike it up, you know, ready to go. We walked like 5 minutes, we were at the cliff. It was like right there. It was gonna, like right next to the parking lot. And then everywhere we kind of toured around, there were just more views. It was like, I don't know what the actual topography is like, but it seemed like it was like this like circle. Like, you know, it was, the ridge had like some circular aspect to it or something. Or maybe it was kind of, we just kept walking along this one edge, and it was just views all the way. It was kind of these like $1 million views that were there. And so it's also a similar thing for people who persevere in their spiritual practice, because what people come to spiritual practice looking for is peace. And for people who persevere in their spiritual practice, peace is what they get. Ease is what they get. Peace and ease are the result of spiritual practice. Peace and ease are the purpose of these spiritual practices. And so when a person experiences these things for themselves, it can sometimes come unexpectedly. At the end of a kind of a long haul, where it seems like one is stuck in traffic, and then it's like, oh my God, I've got to climb, you know, this other huge mountain, you know, just got to the parking lot, time to reach this mountain. How long is it going to take? I'm never going to get there. Suddenly, things can just break for a person, just totally unexpectedly, without any kind of prior warning. And that's when a person gets to see a little further. They get to take in a few views, stop and enjoy for a minute, and the view wouldn't normally see. Wouldn't see standing on the ground, wouldn't see from Toronto, wouldn't see from Mississauga, wouldn't see from Milton. It's something that a person only sees when they actually climb up to the top of the ridge, when they have a moment to take it all in. And so for people who experience this, who've seen a little bit further after they've climbed to the top of the ridge, there's no telling them anything to the opposite of what they've seen. And they can see a little bit further, There's no convincing them otherwise from that. That becomes their own personal possession, becomes their own personal knowledge. Having gone there once as well, it's a lot more difficult to convince such a person that they can't do it. It's a lot more difficult to convince them that their practices are fruitless, that what they're aiming at isn't possible to get. And of course, after this, after going to this kind of lookout, seeing the views, we had to come back down after some time. And then we went and had tea, which was kind of quite nice. And then me and Bill came, and it was all-night chanting at the Katina. And so in the same way, for a person who perseveres in their spiritual practices, these moments can come. And kind of moments of peace, moments of clarity. And the technical name for these things are jhanas, kind of the time when thinking stops. Because this is the obstacle to having a lot of the peace that a person wants, is this incessant thinking about the future, thinking about the past, thinking about the present. When all of that settles down, it's like the clouds dispersing. If you're on a mountaintop, even if you climb to the top of the mountain, there's all kinds of clouds, you can't see the view. But if the clouds disperse, if it's a nice sunny day, you can see very far. You can have time to take it in. And so in the same way, when a person stays with their practice, when their mind settles down, that's when they experience these feelings of ease. That's when they have the taste of what they're looking for. Because the Buddha says that the mind is something radiant, but it's clouded by these defilements that come. So when these defilements disperse, that's when we get to see the radiance of the mind. But of course, even this is temporary. And kind of mind calms down. Can't stay there forever. Eventually, a person has to come down from the mountain and go back to their regular life. And so that's why, when that happens, a person learns to make their life their practice. Learns to turn their life as much as possible towards the Dhamma. Because it's possible through making the conditions good, through changing the little patterns in one's breath, through watering the plant again and again. It's possible that that plant will grow. It's possible that that seed will grow. And eventually, it's possible that that seed will bear fruit. So when that seed bears fruit, when it grows, then a person has the opportunity to pick it and eat it. So this portion of seeing the view is only a part. What we really want is to allay our hunger, is to stop feeling hungry for things. And so this is the next part of the Buddhist practice. But I'm all out of time. So maybe another time for that. But enough to know that there are these potentials in the Buddhist teachings, in the practice. So long as a person follows the GPS, so long as one perseveres through the traffic, so long as one climbs the mountain, one gets to see the view. So long as one plants a seed in good soil, so long as one waters that seed, so long as one allows it to grow with patience, with perseverance, then the day comes when it bears fruit. And when a person eats this fruit, that's when they allay their hunger. That's when they stop wanting to eat so much. That's when they experience true ease. That's when they gain true peace. Because it's this hunger, it's this craving, it's this desire that leads people over and over again, time and again, to seek delight where they don't find it. The ending of this hunger is ease. And that's the point of our spiritual practice.